What's going on, Serial Progress Seekers? Marshall here, and I'm so pumped for you to check out today's episode. Ben, Tabitha, and myself are going to sit down. We're going to hash out the ins and outs of something that's really become incredibly important to our lives as entrepreneurs, and that's outsourcing. So, if you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, you're thinking about jumping into the world of outsourcing for some sort of specialized project, you're going to find some real gold in this episode because we're going to cover all aspects of knowing when you're ready, knowing where to go and what to do when you get there. This is episode 91 of the Serial Progress Seeker podcast. Let's go.
Welcome to the Serial Progress Seeker podcast, where we share blueprints for building an unconventional life. Each week, we conduct expert interviews, talk strategies, and share advice for escaping the 9-to-5 and building a life where you are free to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, all while making an excellent living. Okay, Serial Progress Seekers, let's get started with the show.
All right, guys, I'm excited to be here with you today, and we are covering something that is going to hit incredibly hard and incredibly home for all of us because obviously we're sitting around here, we're sitting at our house, we're working from home, we are entrepreneurs, we're doing this grind on the daily. But I think there's something that we haven't talked about a whole lot that I'm really excited for us to dig into, and that is how we sometimes don't even think about all of the things that we can unload. You know, I think we all carry a whole lot from the things that we do on a daily basis, you know, whether it's, you know, posting to social media or it's, you know, putting this content out there for a course creation, whatever it may be, we are always in go mode. And the thing that I think that a lot of people want to know is, how do we get so much shit done? Right? It's crazy. And I think we get some help along the way. And I think that's what we kind of want to get into a little bit. We don't do it alone. You know, we have a great little team, but we also have a team that we even go beyond our team. So I think that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about outsourcing, how we go about doing it, how other entrepreneurs out there can go about doing it, because I think it's something that kind of intimidates a lot of people, and it can be intimidating because you're not sure about letting go of the control of your aspects of your business. You're not sure about whether you're going to get the same productivity or you're going to get the same results, and how much it's going to cost. And that's the kind of stuff we want to go over today. So when let's just jump right in. When you start thinking about outsourcing, both of you, I'd love to know both of your thoughts. You know, what has outsourcing done for the Serial Progress Seeker brand overall?
For me, and just to give Tabitha time to formulate an answer here. So now, Tabitha's had an answer, I'm sure, before we even started here with this one, because we both are very passionate about this, right? For me, it was the ability to work from a backpack. I had a brick and mortar business that was my first business, and worked in a lot of brick and mortar businesses, and having to show up so that you could interact with your team to do work, that was limiting. Not that it was the worst experience. I loved all my coworkers along the way, or most of them anyway. But I think that the life that I wanted to have, where I could travel and be mobile and kind of go where I wanted and make money wherever I wanted to make money, it depended upon really being able to work with people in a way where we weren't in the same location. And so for me, when I designed what my life was going to be like, it was living with my whole office in my backpack, and you can't fit people in a backpack. So you have to really get used to working with people at, from long distances, whether that person is actually from your town or it's somebody that you met online, being able to communicate effectively and do things. And it was important. So it completely changed my life. If there's anything that changed my life, we talk about the marketing aspects. We talk about, the cool little business systems and things like that. But I think the most important thing for me entirely was really understanding how to outsource tasks and communicate with those team members, wherever I happen to be and whatever my current circumstances were. So incredibly important to me. And it absolutely was the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I don't feel like people put enough stress on this, but it was the biggest piece of the puzzle for me to be able to live the kind of life that I live now. So Tab, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I would say that the other part of that too is being able to increase our speed in the things that we were able to accomplish, because each individual only has so much time and so much effort that they can put into any given project, and being able to outsource some things that maybe this wasn't my strong suit, we could outsource that part to somebody else and allow me to spend the time on my strong suits, and then give that other task to other people, just increased our speed and to be able to accomplish a lot more a lot faster.
Yeah, I think that the really wake up call for me was, in the beginning was like, oh, hire someone to do this and do this, and I was such a bootstrapper that I wasn't. I was afraid. Let's just be real. I was afraid of giving things over because it wouldn't be done the same way. The first thing that I hired in my business that was quote unquote, more of a backpack based business, meaning that we were selling stuff online. I hired a customer support person, and I didn't think that it was going to be as dramatic of a difference because, we'll talk about this as we go. In the beginning, you start off thinking it's going to take time to train them and get them where they need to be. But I'm telling you guys, within the first month of hiring someone to help me with the customer support side, which I'd been handling for several months at this point by myself, on top of doing all the other things. But the month that I hired that person, we doubled, and I think it got close to tripling our income from the previous months before. So it wasn't like an accident. It wasn't like we had something new. It was literally just not having to worry about so much of that piece of the puzzle. It was dramatic. And that was the thing when I was like, oh, this is what all the fuss is about. And so I had a very quick sort of introduction. And this is when I wasn't even doing it that well. We had that kind of change in what was coming in. And you're right. It was just because we got faster. We got so much faster at everything that we were doing just by having another hand on deck to help. And so I think for all of us here, outsourcing work and having a team that you can depend on to do other things, and not being so dependent on where they are in the world, has become a way of life for us. And that's why I'm super excited to sort of go into the individual aspects of what we're going to be doing on this call today. So hopefully, my goal, and I don't know, what goals you guys have with this pod, but my goal is that we come off of this podcast and anybody that's listening to this one in particular can get started and not be so afraid to get started with hiring their first outsource worker, whether that's somebody that's local, but doesn't necessarily have to show up at the office all the time, if there even is an office, or maybe somebody that you're hiring online that lives, maybe a couple countries away, or even in your own country, but a few states away, or a few miles away from you, whatever it is. I want this to be something that's comfortable for everybody because it is that life-changing once you start to understand how it works, and the pitfalls of it too.
Well, you guys already touched on it. Obviously, the name of the game, and so much of what we do is speed. But there's got to be some other telltale signs that are out there that make you go, you know what? I've got to start outsourcing some of this crap, or it's never going to get all done. So, if I'm sitting at home, I'm a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur. How do I know that I'm ready? Like, how do I know like the specific tasks that are good tasks to go and outsource? Like, how did you know when you came across that in each individual spot?
For me, there was this feeling, and it's a feeling that I have gotten from a lot of other entrepreneurs that were sort of at this stage. It's this feeling that, and it really starts to hit you, of feeling trapped. And that's the best way I can describe it. Like you're in a box and you don't have the resources to get yourself out of the box. Now, what this feels like is that you've got all this work, but you're not bringing in enough money to hire someone to do it. Now, I know that sounds crazy because we're talking about outsourcing and hiring people to do the work, but that's when the feeling starts to sort of get there. Or that's one extreme of it. And I think that, this is a multifaceted sort of thing. That's one extreme of it. The other extreme of it is, and this is the more fun one, but it's when you've got a lot of money coming in because your product is selling like hotcakes and you've got a lot of different customers. And you realize that while the money may be good, you are leaving so much money on the table and so much business on the table because you are literally filling up your entire day with these things. And so it's one of those things that, like, either you feel like you're in that box, or you're at a spot to where when your head hits the pillow at the end of the day, you are completely exhausted and you have no idea of how this thing that you're doing, which is going well, is supposed to grow, because you feel so tired and you don't have anything left to give. And so those are the two extremes. And I think it's important because like I think the second one a lot of people can identify with and they can recognize that. But the first one too, there's always that thing of like, I need help, but there's not enough money to get help. Well, if you do it strategically, there is, and that's how you get out of that box. And so for me, that's the place where I started to realize that, and the thing that I try to help other people identify is, okay, it's time to get some help and not be a one person show anymore. Those are the two big things that I'm looking for. What about you, Tabitha?
Yeah. So for me, I would say it's when you realize you're spending your time doing things that you absolutely hate doing because you have to do it. When you could be spending your time doing things that you actually enjoy or the things that are income producing. Usually you're the person in there that has to do those certain tasks, to generate that income. And if you're not able to do that side of your business because you're tackling all the little things that are still have to be done, I'd say that's when it's the time.
Well, it's interesting too. Just as a side caveat, a lot of people here maybe are thinking that this is just when you're a solopreneur and you're by yourself, you're doing this. But I think a great way to actually start this, and something that we actually encourage everybody on our team to do, is within your own, set of tasks. How do you get that done? How do you get that done without you having to do it? Because at the end of the day, in our company, it's just, did the job get done at a high level? That's it. Now, obviously, there's a line of how much we can spend on things, and we have budgets for things. But at the end of the day, if we can produce something at a high level, I really don't care that the particular person that task is assigned to, or it's their quote unquote job, if they did it. It's really about, did we bring something to the table that blew us away? And so with all of our folks that are on our team, like, one of the big things that we encourage everybody to do is to learn how to outsource themselves so that they can go get help, without having to come ask me or having to ask, our director of operations if, this is okay. It's literally getting them to a place of knowing, I have this at my disposal all the time that I can go do. I just have to get good at doing it. And so I think with anything that you're doing, with any gig that you've got right now, whether it's just you or you're working with somebody else, looking for those opportunities to make your life more efficient, to get rid of the things that you hate, because this is exactly what Tabitha said. When you get all of the things or some of the things that you hate off of your plate, the quality of your work goes through the roof. And you become that person, whether you're in an organization or you're doing things for yourself, that what we call world class. And we've been talking about this a lot lately. How do you get to a level where you're not just doing something that's at the level everybody else is doing, but you're at the level where there's like 10 people, there's 10 people on the planet that you could point out. They're putting out something, a product or, a something out there, a service that is, there's maybe 10 people on the planet that can do it. And a lot of people are like, well, that seems like a lot. There's a lot of people on the planet, but that's what outsourcing can afford you. You can be at this point to where you are collecting talent and using talent in a way that what you do is completely unique, and it's at a level that nobody else can do. And so, like I said, this is something that we really do encourage. It's when you're hating your job, it's because you're not doing your job correctly, and not doing your job correctly typically means you're not getting the help that you need to get. And so, yeah, I think that's all of us though. Like everybody here, there's parts of our gig that, like right now, I guarantee you every one of us right now can be like, I got to get that off my plate. I got to get that off my plate. I hate this. And if you let that set for too long, it becomes, I hate this job. And, and so that's the encouragement that I give anybody that's listening to this, is if you're in a place in your job where you're like, I am a creative and smart person, why am I doing this? When you're having that, and I'm so glad you brought that up, Tabitha, it's time to get someone else to help you with that. And as we'll talk about later, it's usually not that expensive to do that. And so I think the big answer for me on this question is that, what do you hate? Number one, what do you not want to do anymore that's going to completely ruin your job if you have to keep doing it? Number two, if you're kind of by yourself and you got something that's going and you're making money, but you're like, oh, I don't have enough money to hire someone, but I can't keep doing this by myself because this feels like I'm trapped. That's one place. The other is you're making so much money because your product is selling like hotcakes and you just don't have anything left to give. And those are the real big markers that it's time to get some help. And as we're going to really get into here, it does not cost that much to get the help if you know where to start looking for help to do it. There's plenty of folks out there that are looking for a gig, and they will trade having to drive to an office, having to come into a place where they don't want to be. They will trade that for giving you a deal on doing the work. And this is where it gets really fascinating.
Yeah, I'm really glad you made that distinction between the solopreneur aspect versus an entrepreneur who's maybe part of a team, because I think that's so important. Because as a solopreneur, obviously you're looking for someone maybe that has skill sets outside of your own, or like you just said, maybe you don't have quite the budget aspect to be able to go after a certain area. So you got to start figuring out your own way. But when you're kind of like us and you're a team full of entrepreneurs, you're also still looking to, like, just like Tabitha said, unload some things maybe you don't want to do, and kind of streamline your process so that at the end of the day, no matter what, whether you're by yourself or part of a team, you're putting out that world-class content. And so I think that's absolutely huge. I'm really glad you touched on that, but you went somewhere, and I want to go a little further. Where on earth do I go? So I've started to slowly figure some of these things out myself, because just like you just said, you as a team, you've kind of deputized your entire team and said, hey, you need help, go out and get it. So where are the best places to go? If I need to go look online, if I need to go, maybe from a local aspect, where do I go to find help, whether it's, design or, otherwise?
Before we get into this, I think it's important to set what we're actually looking for long term, versus is this just a short term or is this a long term? A lot of the things that we do here, we're looking for long term people to work with. Like, that's what we're after. But it's really easy to get yourself in bad relationships if you go straight to the full hire for long term. Like, that's something that I had to learn the hard way very early on. I would bring on business partners, like actual business partners in the company, give them equity because they had a skill. I would go hire people because they had a skill, and you get yourself into these very expensive situations that you should have just started with what we're about to do and talk about. So for me, I like when I have an idea, typically it's for, okay, this is something that I'm going to need long term, but I don't want to get into a relationship that's going to be long term really fast. I like to think of this like dating. And I think it's important when you think of this like dating, you start making better decisions. And so from a work perspective and outsourcing, go into this like you are trying to get to a long-term relationship, but you got to go on a few dates first. And so the best way, I think, if you're someone that is trying to date people and to try to form relationships, is you got to know where to hang out to do that, right? You got to know where are the best spots for the kind of person that I am, the kind of person that I'm looking for, that I can go find those people. So where do we look for those people? The first place, and this is one that a lot of people overlook because they never go deeper with it. But the first place that we look is a website called Fiverr. So Fiverr.com, we'll link to it in the show notes, of course. But Fiverr is, or is at least it started out as this place where you could get small tasks done for $5. And so real good hook. And they grew into a huge, huge company with that hook. Not everybody on Fiverr these days just costs $5. It's just the way that it goes. And the more advanced you are, the more reviews you have, the more jobs that you've done, the more that you can demand, or the more experience. Even if you're brand new, but you've got experience outside of Fiverr, you can come in and you can demand more. And so you can go to Fiverr. There's people that charge $5 for things. There's people that charge thousands of dollars for things on Fiverr. But the idea is there's a collection that is searchable, and you can go in and say, I need this task done. And then you get all of these providers that are sitting there waiting to do these tasks for you. And what's even better than that is you can sort by reviews. You can sort by the kind of the level that they are within the system because of experience that they have. And the best part of Fiverr is you can jump into Fiverr and you can hire someone to do your gig without much of a commitment. And so strategy on Fiverr for me is very, very simple. I like to go into Fiverr. I like to find people that for a task, let's say that we were creating a new graphic for this podcast, right? Like, we love our graphic, but let's say we were creating a new graphic. What we would do is we would go to Fiverr and we would type in podcast cover, and we would put that into Fiverr, and it would give us a whole mess of things. Now, what I want to do is I actually want to sort by reviews. And so I'm going to sort by reviews, and I'm going to say, okay, who are the best people to do this? And then I'm going to find someone that has some really good podcast covers that I think sort of fit into what we're doing. They've got past designs that they're showcasing, and we're doing that. Now, here's where we sort of take a step off. I don't want to just hire one person to do this. I want to be as economical as possible, and actually get what I want. Now, a lot of people are thinking, well, Ben, I thought we were going to be as cheap and as inexpensive as possible. Trust me when I tell you that the end result is going to be that. So think about if you could hire 4 people on Fiverr to do a podcast cover and you were paying $10 to each of those people. Okay. Now, only one of them is going to produce the one that you actually love, but you're going to be working with 4 different people at the same time to actually create lots of different styles of things that you can bring in. Now, each of those people, when they send you something, you can make revisions on those things, and you can look in their description of how many revisions they'll give you, but you can go through this process. And so the linear way that I used to work is I'd hire one person, we'd get there, or we wouldn't get there, and then I'd have to move on to the next person. And then we're talking about a job that could take, a month to 2 months for something as simple as a podcast cover, because you want to get it right. It's important. These are things that may seem small, but you want to get them right. And so now what we do is we hire 4 at once, and within a week we have gotten to our end result. 3 of them we didn't use, but it was $10. It was $10. And you're maybe sitting there and being like, well, how can these people do a job like this for $10? Well, I don't sit around I do, but most people don't sit around with a bunch of podcast templates at their disposal, right? But this is their gig. That's what they do. And so they have lots of jumping off points, so they don't ever have to start from scratch. And so you've got 4 at once, you hire them out, and you're going to be working with them throughout that week. And at the end of the week, you're going to have something that is absolutely amazing that came from one of them. And that's a beautiful, beautiful way to do business. Now, here's where things get really, really interesting. You do that a few times and you start to understand, I really like the way this one works. I really like the way that this one communicates. And so what we have done a lot with Fiverr is we've gone back to the same provider several times because they won out in one of those competitions with 4 or 5 other different providers, right? And we go back to them and they get us, and we see consistent work over time. And it may not be a podcast cover. It may be an intro to something. It may be a video bumper. There's all kinds of different things that we would need to do that are kind of your standard business things. And after a while, we realized that we really like this person. We've got a few transactions in with them. And eventually we'll reach out and be like, hey, we would love to just work with you on an ongoing basis because we have a project that actually requires this. Would you be interested in doing this? And actually being having a different arrangement than what we're doing here. So for Fiverr, a lot of times that's what it is. It starts off with 4 or 5 different providers for something. Somebody wins out because they communicate well and they do a great job. And then we'll go back to them over and over again. Now, we may run through several rounds of 4, just to see if it was a fluke or we actually got it. But it's pretty cheap to do that overall. And at the end of the day, you run into a situation where you've got somebody that is world-class, that's not overly expensive, that gets what you're trying to do, and they will communicate well. And notice I've said communicate like 4 times in the last minute, but that is the big key. When you're working with people on the internet, whether they're in your town or they're not in your town, but when you're working with people via email or through an online messaging service, or you like directly through Fiverr that you can do everything there, you got to make sure that they know how to communicate. If they can, you can get really, really good work fast, and you can get changes made fast. A lot of times, guys, it's, oh my gosh, this is perfect except for this font. Can we change the font? And it's as simple as that. And if somebody can make that change fast and get it back to you, you're good. That piece of the puzzle's done. You move on to the next thing. And so something that maybe cost you $100 to get done with one provider that would take you 4 weeks, now you can spend $100 or less, get 4 different providers, get something that is absolutely world-class, and you're done in a week. And when you can have that kind of efficiency, you start to understand how somebody that gets really good at outsourcing can make a whole lot more money faster. So that's Fiverr. I mean, I love Fiverr just because it's been such a good thing for us. There's definitely things I wouldn't hire out on Fiverr, and that probably takes us into some of the next stuff that we're talking about. So what else? Well, you may just kind of go into some others, or like Tab, what do you think?
Yeah, go on. If you want to cover the next one, I can talk about doing the local stuff. So
I like it. I like it because local is a huge part of what we do in terms of hiring too. Is we hire a lot of local folks to do things, even though there's no central office to show up to. So absolutely, and you're so good at that. So I'll talk about another one that's been really successful for us, which is Upwork. And let me kind of get into the difference first. Fiverr, I do a lot of things that are graphical. A lot of things like let's say I was in a restaurant and I wanted a menu design. Fiverr's perfect for that, right? Let's say that I wanted a cover for my Facebook page. It's great for that. Let's say that I was doing a podcast and I needed the intro music with a really professional announcing voice. Fiverr's great for that, right? So there's all these little tasks that are really, really good that you can get done there. And like I said, if this is something you do for a living, maybe you wanted to start a service that you do this kind of thing. You can have a whole team of workers, but you're the organizer, right? But let's say you want to do like programming, like you want to build an app. Let's say that you want to do something that is like, a big extended project. Like maybe you want to illustrate an entire book. A great place to get started is Upwork. And Upwork is going to be a lot of folks that are also doing things on Fiverr, by the way. They mix, a lot of these folks mix their time between these places. But Upwork's a great place to find, for me anyway. And I know that you can find announcers, you can find people that do video stuff, you can find all that on Upwork too. But Upwork for me is where I find the kind of talent that I know if they can do a good job, this is going to be something that's a lot more technical and something that's probably going to be a lot longer of a project. So a lot of my Fiverr stuff is like a week. A lot of my Upwork hires are the kinds of hires that I definitely know we're going to be getting into some big time stuff that maybe we'll be working together for years. And that's when you start building software. This is one of those things that's key. Now, with Upwork and with software, I do the exact same thing as I do with Fiverr. I typically go in and I post a job. And one of the big things that we do, and this is something that, in my marketing world, this is a tip that's like all over the place, but I think it's incredibly important to mention. In my job postings, I always have like a secret code word that I put into the listing that I say, when you reply to this job because you're interested, make sure you mention the secret code word. And that could just be something like Garfield the cat, or like just silly stuff, but something that's so out of the ordinary they wouldn't accidentally say it in their reply or their application to be a part of this. So you put your job out there, all these people that are interested, they will apply. Anybody that doesn't put that code word in it, they are not good at communicating. They're not good at reading directions. They're gone. They're immediately off the list. So if you get 20 people that apply, you're probably getting rid of 5 to 10 of them right there. And you know that this is going to be a bad situation because they can't really even read the job description. So that's a start. But after that, I'm still trying to hire maybe 3, maybe 4. And let's say that I'm coding an app. Let's say that I'm coding a piece of software that works on the net, or maybe even a piece of software that works right on your computer. What I don't want to do is hire that job first. That is a terrible idea. That's a good way to throw money down the drain and never, ever see it again. What you want to do is you want to take a small job, something that's really, really small, but still sort of fits in that technical realm, and have them do it. So just recently, we had a piece of software that somebody else had built for us, and we needed a new developer, and so we wanted to bring in a new developer. And so we actually, with the teams that we wanted, we said, well, this is a new feature that we want to bring into the software. Here's sort of what the software looks like. How would you put together the screens to actually implement this feature based on what's already here? And so you have 4 or 5 people that are doing a job that maybe, that this job is not the big one, but maybe, we're spending $300-400 to have each of the people actually go do this job. And what you find out really, really quickly is who has the chops, who can cut it, and then who can actually code something. And that's the other side. Sometimes we'll have them code some little tiny thing that does next to nothing, just to see how quickly they can crank things out. But also, if something's wrong, how quickly they can correct it. And there's times on these little mini things that we have them code that, like, I think it's pretty good out of the gate. And I would be proud to go take that and to do something else with it, that I like, actually, could you go change this and do this and this and this, and give them instructions, because this is not a mission critical thing for our company to do, but seeing how they communicate and work with me back and forth is important. Once again, some people may be saying, well, Ben, I don't have an extra $300 to put into the thing that I want to build. But you got to think, when I'm building an app that is going to cost me $20,000, $30,000 in the grand scheme of things, maybe I've got investors, maybe I've got people that are helping me finance this stuff. I don't want to mess up on the person that's coding it the first time. So that $300-$400 ends up saving me $30,000-$40,000 in the beginning, so that I get the right person that I'm going to be working with long term. And so for me, like I said, between those two things, I always like to start out of the gate. If I don't have any resources and I'm starting from scratch, I like to start off with hiring 3 to 4 people on Fiverr, 3 to 4 people on Upwork. Like I said, for Fiverr, for me, it's more of the kind of work that is graphical, audio, those kind of things. I master a lot of my music there. Like, here's the thing. I can master music once it's done so that it's kind of volume ready, but I'm not real good at it. And it takes me forever. I can go to Fiverr and I can have somebody do it in an afternoon. And the level of technical expertise that you can get out of that is absolutely huge. Great little story. We put out a song not too long ago called She Knows. And so this was a rock song or whatever that we put out. And I went on Fiverr. I found someone to do this. I sent a couple different people the file. And this is how I actually decided who to work with. I messed up and sent the MP3. Okay. I sent the MP3. Everybody wanted the wave. 3 of them didn't say anything about me sending the MP3. One of them said, or actually, no, I actually sent a wave file, but this is what's funny. I had made the wave file by converting an MP3 instead of just kicking it out, for all you technical folks out there. So I had exported as an MP3 and then used a converter to convert the MP3 instead of just exporting as a wave. Now, the difference between this is very subtle, but 3 of them didn't say a word about it. But they had a mediocre quality file because it was a copy of a copy between things. The guy that I ended up hiring, he said, I'm hearing some audio artifacts on this. Did you mix this down as an MP3 and then use a converter to do this? And I was like, holy shit, I did. That level of detail. And then it took me 2 seconds. I went and mixed him down the file from the actual program as a straight wave, so it wasn't going through 2 or 3 iterations. That one thing was like, I'm glad I hired 3 people. I will never work with these people again. This person actually cares about my project. They care about the other end. I think it was actually, he was the most expensive. And I was like, don't care. I will spend less money and get a better result in less time with this person. And so that tactic, whether it's Upwork, whether it's Fiverr, saves you an absolute fortune. And it works so well when you don't have the luxury of meeting a person in person. And I think that's the cool part about this next thing that we're going to is, even if you're not going to work with someone in the same room all the time, when you hire local, you do have some different options because you do have more of an option to do some things face to face. And so Tab is much better at this. When you hire local and you outsource local, what's your process on that?
Well, so for starters, I think that the kind of people, for us specifically, when we're looking to hire somebody locally, it's totally different elements. Like, it's not for graphic design, it's not for audio stuff. It's usually for the personality, because they're going to be filling a role that's similar to what we're already doing. And so one of the first things that we always like to do, or did when I was in that role, was go to our local people, go to our local Facebook groups, and go to our own social media, people that are already following us, and let them know that we're looking for somebody, because we want to find somebody that's already a fan of ours, that already knows us, understands us, likes us, wants to hang out with us. So those are the people that we're looking for already. And I know when 6 years ago, when the three of the team members ended up pregnant at the same time, and we had to hire people to come in and replace us because there was going to be 3 of us out at the exact same time. That's exactly what we did. Is we went to our Facebook, profiles, and we put things out there. Hey, we're looking for somebody, and this is the kind of characteristics that you need to have. And it's funny that you mentioned putting something in there. I did the same thing when I was asking for resumes and cover letters and give me, your background. I would always throw something weird in there to make them pay attention to details. And if they miss that one little thing, I kicked them out of the thing already. But for me, it was real big too to meet the local person in person. Like, I took them out to coffee, we had conversations, we talked. And one of the people that we ended up hiring from that was, and it's so silly, but when she sent in her email and her cover letter, like at the very bottom of it, it said, "Have an awesome day." And I'm like, "You're my person," because that sounds like something that I would say. So I was looking for somebody that had my personality, my characteristics, because I needed them to replace me in the things that I was doing when I was going to be out for maternity leave. So it's going and finding your group right then and there, the people that already follow you, that like you, and just putting that out there.
Well, I think it is. It's like a lot of, we're talking about why we use the different networks and why we would go local versus, a Fiverr or a Upwork. And it's not like you can't find these people there, but for us, a lot of times when we get into our customer service aspects, like you said, it's the personality based stuff, the people that are going to be interacting with customers more, and not just with us. That's when we really like to go local. Uh, and that's a preference of ours, by the way.
Well, you can't train a personality. Personality is personality. That you just have to have that. You can train everything else.
Right. And yeah, I think that I love the whole vibe of when we do hire in a more local way, we have always met with them in person, not just because you can, but because there's so many subtle things that you can pick up on when you're sitting across from somebody. And like I said, why would we include a local thing in an outsourcing call? Because the vast majority of our core team comes from that. And that's the thing that I want to understand, everybody to understand about our team is the people that we work with, that is our core team, that is our daily team. A lot of those people are people that we met because we threw out an interview. Hey, we're doing a job. You want an interview? They passed the first test, and we met with them, and they just blew us away. And it's amazing what you can pick up from somebody just from sitting across from them once, even if you don't sit across from them. Like I said, with our team, we see each other probably in person, 3 times a year, more lately because we're making more of an effort because we like each other. But, in terms of what we actually have to do for work, it's maybe 3 times a year. And I think that having that, can this person hang with not only me, the person that's interviewing, but, you know, everybody that's already a part of this, and is that going to work? I think that's incredibly important. And it's something that we cherish, is our ability to, if we had to be in the same room, could we work together? And I think that's a strength for us of not having to work in the same room is that. So, I absolutely love that. I think something else that I think is incredibly important that we mentioned sort of in this phase is when we do reach that point, when we've been working with somebody on a few projects that we want to bring them more into an internal space, everybody starts off on like a 3-month kind of trial. And this is something that's very conscious for us, and something we tell people. It's like, hey, we're going to give it a shot for 3 months. We want to do this, but this is for 3 months. If it works out for 3 months, then we'll look at this being a more permanent thing, because we are looking for something permanent in these situations. And so, our core internal team, what everybody does, us that are on this call that you guys can see and listen to, the folks that are behind the scenes that you guys don't ever get to hear from, it really is about chemistry and communication. And without good communication, we would be very, very bad at what we do. We still wouldn't be doing this. I mean, that's all there is to it. Some other things that I think are probably important to talk about are how we communicate with each other on a weekly basis. If we're going to harp on communication, we should probably talk about what does it take to actually stay in communication with people that you're working with. And so, just to lay out kind of how we do things, is we have a defined set of meetings every week to make sure that we are on task with what we're trying to do. Some people call them stand-ups. We have basically a few stand-ups every week to sort of stay where we need to be, but we have specific names. Like at the beginning of the week for this podcast, you guys, we do our writer's room. And so we'll get together on our writer's room. We'll talk about topics that we want to maybe cover on the podcast or on our social channels. And then we'll beat them up a little bit. And then we'll sort of all go our separate ways, and we'll work with our separate teams to carry out some of those things that we're doing. But also, like, you can't do in-person meetings all the time. Like, nobody wants to do that. Like that, it's bad enough when you're in person, you're having to constantly leave what you're doing to go to a meeting. But when you're like on your own schedule and you're online, it's even worse. And so we try to have those very defined meetings, but we try to keep those as minimal as possible. And then Slack is the way that we communicate, pretty much, 24/7 if we needed something. Now, none of us are actually up 24/7 or communicating. It's not that intrusive. But Slack has been an absolute huge thing for us because, number one, we can communicate with each other individually. That's great. But we can also communicate with each other in a way where we can bring in teams to certain rooms that are focused on certain things and communicate about those things without interrupting anybody else. And so we can have those team back and forth without having to actually get on a meeting. The other thing is file sharing. If you are doing online stuff, file sharing is one of the hardest things to sort of wrap your mind around. Like, how do we look at the same thing at the same time or share things? And Slack has made that absolutely easy. Some caveats to that, I would say, is we're big into Google Docs and we're very, very big into Dropbox. In how we share things. And then probably one more thing that I would have to say as an honorable mention is Canva. Canva is very, very good. And then like Tab's going to throw one more in there that I completely forgot about. That's like such a core piece of the puzzle for us.
I was just waiting for it. I was like, he's going to say Trello. No, Trello. That's a big one for us for keeping everything organized.
Can you walk through, because I think this is like so important and it just slipped my mind because but yes, we look at this daily. Can you kind of walk through how Trello works for anybody that doesn't understand? Because I love certain things about Trello that we can't really do in any other way. And for somebody that's never used Trello before, they probably don't understand this. So like, what about Trello makes it unique in that how we sort of work with it and we work with each other?
So I think what makes Trello so great is that it's kind of it's great for workflow, especially for us with the podcast and ideas and things that we're kicking around. So imagine having a blank wall, and on your wall you have like little tabs, categories of things that you need to do. And then underneath those categories you have like a post-it note. And on that post-it note is your category, your title, your whatever you're working on. And then you could take that post-it note and move it along the process as you go. So you go from idea to approved idea to, okay, let's go make this happen. Okay, let's go do post production, and you just take it all through each step with that, and the whole team can access it. It can view it. We can put ideas on it. We can. Everything's in one organized, really nice place, and you can kind of see so any given moment we can go open our podcast board and see exactly what episode is being recorded, what is being edited, what's got social graphics being worked on, and what's already went live and done.
Well, and to really put this in perspective and like what we're doing right here, it's like Tabitha said, we have that Trello board and we're moving those pieces along the board. The last thing that you want to have to do, though, is everybody having to constantly be in communication with each other to know, hey, is it my time to work? Because this is an assembly line. And I want you to think work a lot of times is getting your part done, passing it to someone else so they can get their part done. And there's a lot of needless communication that happens with this. With Trello, and us not being in the room makes it a lot harder. With Trello, what we're able to do is simply that is, Ashton, which does, the vast majority of all the editing that you guys see, whether it be a social channel or, one of the podcasts, Ashton doesn't need to be like constantly saying, hey, is this ready? Is this ready? Is this ready? When a card gets moved from, shoot this episode, which is, the episode we're doing right now, this was in the, hey, it's time to shoot this episode. When it gets moved over into the section that Ashton's actually looking for, she knows, hey, I can go to work. These things are actually in my inbox that I can go to work. And you can set up alerts so that, they can be alerted for those things too. But it's just a nice way for everybody to, at a glance, see where we're at, what we're waiting on so that we can do our next piece, and what we have at our disposal to use in the actual finished products, because it's moved from the editing portion over to the, hey, this is done, it's ready to go. Whoever's in the next piece, which is post this in the places it needs to be posted, it's ready for you. And I think that's the huge piece of the puzzle with Trello, is it gets you in a place where everybody can see what everybody's doing at a glance. And that's extremely hard online, but that's extremely hard in an actual office setting too, for everybody to see where everybody's sitting at one point so that they can be a better team member. And so, yeah, between Trello, Slack, and hopping on the occasional Zoom or GoToWebinar meeting every week, and I think we average probably about 2 hours a week in meetings with each other, unless I'm on it and I talk longer. But yeah, everybody will laugh at that one. But we average probably about 2 hours. We average about 2 hours altogether. Um, and then obviously all of us have kind of our offshoot meetings. I would love to say that we only average 2 hours in meetings online, but no, the idea is altogether we probably do about 2 hours, and then we split up and kind of do our own thing. But those are absolutely big things. Now, the cool part about this is everybody would be thinking, okay, well, that's your core team, Ben, that uses that. What about the people that are, that are the outsourcers or the team members that are everybody on the team's team members? They look at Trello too. The idea is they can look and say, okay, it's now time for my part. And yes, they're held accountable by the person that is their quote unquote boss. But still, they know it's time to work by looking at the Trello board. And I think the last thing I want to say about the Trello board, I'm so glad you brought this up. The last thing that I want to say about a Trello board is a Trello board is never done. And if you think your Trello board is as optimized as it can be, it's not. And that's the other goal, is you want to continue to focus on making this assembly line more efficient. I think we're probably in the process right now of taking what we did and squishing it down into something that is even more efficient. And I guarantee you in 3 months, we'll do it again. And so an important part of us being able to communicate and outsource, tasks correctly and to assign to team members correctly is to make sure that we're always looking at how are we communicating and making that more efficient. Once again, how many times have I said communicating on this? And it's where people really screw this up in the beginning is they realize how bad of a communicator they are. But the beautiful part about this is with outsourcing, with building a team, with communicating, it's practice. And, the whole point of this is maybe you don't have to practice some of the stuff that we talked about already. You can just dive right into it, but still that practice of communicating back and forth, because unfortunately, the people that we work with on our team don't live in here in our heads, and they don't know what we're thinking. Even though we think we see it, they don't see it as clearly because we're all different people. So those are the tools that I think are insanely huge for us. And when you get into working with somebody on a more permanent basis, not just on a job, those are huge. And like I said, I think you kind of see the window of how we start, how we sort of progress, and then how we turn these folks into full-blown team members that can interact with us on a daily basis. And anybody can do that, because good Lord, I'm the most disorganized person on the planet. And we've built a whole thing doing it that continues to grow and grow. So yeah, hopefully all that was a decent answer.
That was a very good in-depth answer. I think it's really important, all the different elements you guys touched on. Thank you for doing all that, because you guys just did a really big part of the heavy lifting of the whole idea of outsourcing. And I think the distinction you just made too is so important. The connection between bringing on someone who's considered a quote unquote outside worker is very much like the connection of your own internal team. And if you can, as you bring those people on, as whether they're on a part-time role or not, for a little while, at least you're going to consider them part of your team. So as you're bringing those people on your team, obviously onboarding has got to be top of mind. You got to get someone right on board. And in some of these situations, guys, you got to get them done, like yesterday. You got to bring them on board and get them ingrained in your brand and what you want to be able to effectively convey. So when you think about onboarding, whether it's a hired worker or even when you bring on someone, either outsource or it's a new team member and you want to get them onboarded quickly, what are the best ways you can do that?
I have lots of opinions on this. Tab, do you have anything you want to start with?
Well, I definitely have it's a shocker. We've got a brand book that we put together that has all of our brand in it. It's got our logos, it's got our taglines, it's got graphic design styles that we like to go towards, our fonts. It's a brand guidebook. It's everything about us in one place where we can give that over to those people that we are outsourcing to, that they can look at it at a glance and see exactly who we are, what we stand for, and the styles that we're going for, so that the minute they get ready to work, they don't have to question, hey, where do I go find a logo? It's already there. They've got a link to that. What are our colors? What are the fonts that I need to be using? What type of language do I need to use? Is there anything that I need to steer clear of? All of that stuff is inside of our brand guidebook. And so we automatically give that out to anyone that's coming on board for the first time. Even if it's somebody that we're hiring internally that's coming on board, they need to understand who we are and what we stand for. And that's one of the things that we do. And we've actually got a guidebook template that we can actually share with you guys, put it in the show notes, and you guys could use that for yourself.
Yeah, and what we'll also do, because I think this is a great thing to like do, we'll give you guys that, which is something you can build your own brand book. But we'll give you a copy of ours too in the show notes, so you can kind of see what we stand for right now. And by the way, in 6 months that may be different because a brand is always evolving, and you have to kind of make these changes. But as Tabitha said, it's super important that when you bring somebody on to work with you, that they understand where they're starting to stand. Most people come into an employment situation and they get to be in a team and they don't feel like they're standing on solid ground for a very long time. And so the quicker you can give someone the feeling that you've got a lot of things figured out, and that they're in good hands, that's the number one thing that I want to get across to people. You want to give people a sense that you know what you're doing. Now, I always say we don't know what we're doing here, but we absolutely, at this point, if you were really to look at what we're doing, we absolutely know what we're doing in terms of what we stand for and what our basic platform is. And obviously, there's stuff to always figure out, there's stuff to refine and optimize, but your brand book does that. And, earlier this week, you guys, it's really funny. We talk about brand book a lot between us. We don't talk about it a lot in public. I was on a call and I was teaching people that when we bring on like a new client in our agency, what is like the first thing that we do? And I told them, I was like, I can't really do any of my work until I get the brand book done, or at least I get the first 3-4 pages of the brand book done. When I get the first 3-4 pages of the brand book done, which is like, what's the logo, make sure I got the logo always in front of me. That's, it tells a big story when you're working with the right kinds of clients. What are the colors that, you have to work within that color scheme? What are the fonts that you have to work in? And when you can start getting those pieces of the puzzle put together, you do have a sense of who it is that you're working with and how you fit into the equation. And I think that's the thing. When we onboard, brand book is the first thing that we walk through and we explain to everybody. That is support desk, that is the folks that are building software, that is folks that are actually doing like the bumpers for the podcast or the podcast graphics. This is incredibly important that we get these things in front of them. And it's a quick and easy way for somebody to wrap their head around who you are. Most people miss that. Most people try to explain it and show people. So the brand book, make sure you check ours out. Make sure you go grab it. You can build your own from scratch. We've got a great template for you guys that Tabitha put together for us. And it's been wonderful for us and for a lot of people that we've helped in the last few years. But that's the start. From there, it's a mindset that's hard for a lot of entrepreneurs that are used to doing everything for themselves. It's this mindset of, I can get this done faster than I can teach you how to do it. Well, of course you can. You've been doing it for a long time. And it's a waste of my time to go teach someone and correct them once, because they're going to screw it up probably the first time. But you've got to wrap your head around the fact that the reason that you have brought this person on is so that you can free yourself to do more high paying and high value tasks in terms of you. That's not to say that what they're doing is not extremely high value and just as high value as you, but there are things that you can do as the leader in an organization that only you can do, and only you actually care about enough to do them the way that they need to be done. And so the idea is, you have to understand the first month of working with somebody, you are going to have to step back and you are going to have to take some time to walk them through things and to correct some things. Now, big thing for me is we only correct things once, twice if it's like very complicated. But if somebody can take a direction that you've given them and they never make that mistake again, or they never go down that path again, they're awesome. And it takes about a month. If they can't, it may not be the right person. But I think that's the thing. The first month, you have to have that mindset of, I'm going to have to, sometimes during this month, I'm going to have to actually take more time to explain a task than it would be for me to do it, so that this person actually takes it off my plate. I know that sounds basic, but it's so hard for some people. But if you would just focus on that one thing, which is letting go and letting the person do it, letting them make a mistake, but then taking the time to walk them through the process and explain why it's important to do it that way, then it's big. The other thing that you got to understand is sometimes it's not important to do it that way. It's not important to do it your way. And you find out really quickly that when you have to explain to someone why you do it a certain way, that the way you do it makes no sense in the first place. It's just the way that you started out doing it. It's the way that you got used to. And so that's a very, very powerful thing for an organization, is having to explain why you do something to someone and actually taking the time to do that. It's big. So for us, when we bring on a new worker, typically, if it's somebody that's customer support, the first week is very intensive. It's very big. We're going to spend several hours with them that first week, walking them through everything and getting them going. And then we're going to put them in a situation where it's us and them doing the job together. What would you do in the situation? But we're looking over their shoulder and we're helping them out with that thing. Once they sort of get the rhythm of that after a few times doing something, let's say we're at the support desk and we'll answer tickets with them. We'll answer the first few. We'll let them answer the next few. We'll correct a few things. And then after we get really, really comfortable that they've got it, we'll set them loose and we'll let them go. And, that's a process. Those are the first 2 weeks in our organization. And so it's time spent, but it's time spent us feeling so exhausted. You want to talk about exhaustion that you brought on an outsourced worker? The level of exhaustion you will feel the first 2 weeks of training someone to take these things off your plate will be tenfold. But when you get it done, there's a huge weight that's off your shoulders. And that weight quite possibly is off your shoulders forever. I have not, coming back to the loop that I opened up at the beginning of the show, talking about when I hired the first person and we double tripled. We went from, we were making, I think it was $3,000-$4,000 a month. We went to, actually, no, it was $10,000 a month. Yeah, that's what it was. When I hired my first person, we were making $10,000 a month selling information online. We went to 20 to 25 the next month. Like just hiring that person out. And, that was a huge jump. But what I meant to say is this: when I first brought that person on, I was exhausted, just absolutely exhausted, showing them all the things that they had to do. And then I didn't have to do it anymore. I have not logged in to our support desk in a decade. I kid you not. One of the things that I pride myself in my company that I'm the most proud of is the compliments that we get about our customer support. I mean, does it mean we do the best job always? Does that mean we don't make mistakes to this day? No. But I pride myself in that. Now, keep in mind, at this point, I have trained one person. They have trained 5 or 6 at this point. Like, I didn't have to train those people. I didn't have to log back into the support desk because they had it down. But that's the idea. I've not had to log in and do that job for over a decade now. That just hit me that it's actually been that long because we did it right in the beginning. Now, I stumbled through that, made mistakes. But what I'm saying is, if I haven't had to do that in that long, you can make mistakes and still come out on the other side the right way. And so just a little inspiration for anybody that thinks, I don't know if I can do it. Maybe you've got something special that I don't have. I promise you I don't. Promise you I don't. And a little extra caveat for anybody that's out there. I was doing all of this while I was doing another career at the same time. So my mind was split all over the place. And so if you're in that situation, trust me when I say you can do it. I trained someone to do our support desk for our online business in the conference room for my chiropractic office while I was running around seeing patients. Hey, how are things going? Awesome. I'll be right back. And so if you're in a place right now where you're like, I've got too many other things on my plate, don't worry. You can build this on the side and it actually can come together. And so, yeah. So that's my thoughts on that.
Man, I think that's a perfect way to wrap it up today. I think we've covered so much ground, but that's just the way to do it, because what you're talking about is, obviously we talk to people all the time that are scared. There's fear, there's intimidation, whatever it may be. Okay, what are you scared of? You scared of more money? You scared of more time? You scared of more energy? You scared of more personal time with your family? Like, these are all things that you can gain if you can learn how to properly pass things off and outsource and do things in your own entrepreneurial life. And I think that's just a fantastic way to kind of illustrate that. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we wrap it up here today?
Well, I would just say this: start off small, Start off small. If you're afraid of doing it, start off small, hire someone, hire 3 or 4 people if you do it like we do it. It's not overly expensive. You don't really understand how inexpensive it is until you go over to Fiverr and you do a search. You're like, oh, that's not bad at all. And get the experience of going through it. I can almost guarantee every person that listens to this podcast or watches us on YouTube or wherever you consume this, every single person that goes through that process this week, next week, it will change your life in that short of a time. I kid you not. Everything about my life changed when I figured out the resources and I actually got on the other side of hiring people to do this kind of stuff for me, because I understood, could I do the work? Of course, I could absolutely do the work. But the big takeaway point that I want to leave everybody with is people that are experienced at doing these tasks can do the work in 10 times less time that you can and put out a product that is 10 times better than what you would have come up with spending all that time doing it. And at the end of the day, that's it. You can always go get more money. You can always have a new product. You can always have a new angle. You can always sell something different, but time you will never get back. And you start to understand really quickly that that is the resource that, you're getting back when you do this, and that changes everything. And that's the sole reason that Serial Progress Secret exists at this point, is we figured out how to do some cool things that people were into, and we got really, really good help to make sure we produce those at a world-class level. And so for us, outsourcing work, building a team the right way, learning how to communicate with each other better has been paramount in what we do and at the level that we're able to do it in. So yeah, I would just say, give it a shot, start small. And if you have questions, write us. We've been doing this for so long at this point, and we continue to learn how to do it better. We would love to help you out. And at the end of the day, I hope that if you go back and listen to this podcast, it gave you a good step-by-step of how to get started and how to do this the right way.
And I would throw one more thing in there, that if you're not ready to outsource yet, but you think you will be in the future, go ahead and create that brand guidebook and go ahead and start writing down how you do things. Process your things out, write them down so that when you are ready to start outsourcing, you've got everything ready to go and you can just hit the ground running.
Absolutely. Love it. Love it. I think that's it, Marshall. I thought this was a solid podcast. Watch, we didn't hit record. We'll have to hire someone to remind us to hit record. No, I hope everybody listening loved it and they get a lot out of it. And yeah, we've got more stuff. If you guys like this, send us something, send us a review. I know we usually do this on the back end, but one of the things that I am really looking for right now with the pod that I want to bring out is this. Do you like sort of this step-by-step tutorial stuff? And we were really enjoying this, and we're really sort of leaning into this, is doing like entire courses on our knowledge, but buried right into a podcast. And if you dig this, let us know you dig this, and we'll do a lot more of this stuff, because we, of course, have lots of fun stuff to share that's made us a lot of money and saved us a lot of time over the years. So let us know. We'd be glad to do more. And if you got a topic specifically that you want to cover, send it in to us. We're always looking for stuff that maybe we've missed that we don't know that you want to know about. So let us know.
Thanks so much for checking out this episode of the Serial Progress Seeker podcast. If you want to listen to more episodes, learn more about our mission, or send us questions or feedback about the show, go to serialprogressseeker.com. You can help the mission by subscribing, reviewing, rating, and commenting wherever you listen to or watch podcasts.